Hi, it's Nancy Jean. We're in the garden today. Today I'm going to talk about some peculiarities of tarot. You've probably seen a lot of different tarot decks, and sometimes you've seen readers who say, I don't read reverses, or you see readers who say, I always read reverses. And my opinion on reverses is, I read reverses in decks that you should reverse. And there's a way to tell when you look at a deck if it was meant to be read reversed. This is Hanson-Roberts. And you see the back, whichever way I turn it, you can't tell which way is up. But the artist spent a lot of time working on these images, and they have a little white book that comes with the deck that's in here. And if you can read that, you are a better man than I. But what they have done is in their book, they've described the upright version and the reverse. And the reverse doesn't always mean the complete reverse of that image. It just means different things. So I read reverses. I learned to read reverses. Like the sun, upside down or right side up. The sun is the sun, and it's just the sun, and it's the best you can get. Then you're going to find cards like the Archangel Power Tarot. It's by Radleigh, Valentine. I'm going to put all the decks below. And if you look at the back of his cards, you can clearly tell when you're looking at the card without seeing the face, which way is up. And he means for his cards to be read, which way is up. And one of his cards his cards are all based in this deck, being Archangel, more religious themes, but this is the Hermit. And you can see he's got a lot of the images from the original Hermit, but he puts on a little description on the bottom of his cards, which makes reading these very easy. It's joy through spiritual growth, which is one of the prominent descriptions of the Hermit. So that's kind of how I can tell when I'm looking at a deck, whether it should be read right side up or upside down. Those are reasonably contemporary decks. This is the oldest deck I own. It's called the New Tarot for the Aquarian Age. This deck's over 50 years old. And what they did in this deck was they really screwed with your mind, because they it has instructions, and they turned wands into snakes. They turned swords into blades, which is reasonable, but they also turned cups into pears, which is kind of flaky looking, but the cups became pears because they said that cups were more about intuition. And I don't know what's intuitive about a pear, but they thought it was. And the pentacles became crystals. And they followed the numbering situation. They created jacks, kings, and queens. That they all followed with the old-fashioned Rider-Waite deck. Then they got to the major arcana. And I really learned my major arcana by working with this deck, because this is what they call Justice, Donor. Well, she looks a lot like the Justice card. She does better than many of the others. But none of these have numbers on them. And in their actual little book, their little white book explaining what the cards were about, they kind of went through and put them out of order. So none of them were in the right order. This is the Chariot, the victorious one. He's got no number on him. Here's their Fool card, the nameless one. And their whole narrative in their rather long book on how to use these cards was the way of following the way of the nameless one. And it was sort of the Fool's journey, but rewritten a little differently. This is the Star. And, I learned traditional tarot really well by using a flake deck like that. It's not flaky really, but it is. But they also, this deck came with, in case you didn't know where to put the cards, They have this giant board. This thing opens out to be 4 times this size. And I've actually read with it. You have to lay it out on a floor because there's no table big enough. And when in the 70s, when there wasn't that much to do, I would do that. And I would have friends over and we would read with that deck. And it read just fine. And, you know, I kind of enjoyed it. And then there are decks that are very kitschy. And I've read with this one. It's called the Housewives Tarot. See, it's got a 1950s mom. And some of what I like about it is I think some of the images they picked were so spot on. The hermit is going to a spa, and the hermit really means retreating, finding yourself, centering on yourself. And the 8 of Cups, this woman looks like she wants to be out of here. And that's the 8 of Cups. There are 3 of Swords. You'd know that's a 3 of Swords. You'd recognize that. But their Death card, if I can find it in here, is the High Priestess has the secret syrup. It's Aunt Jemima looking lady. Okay. I know it's here somewhere. I love their Temperance card, and I've used this as an example to explain to people about temperance. Temperance brings really balance in your life, and it means you have to have a little bit of joy, you have to have some justice, you have to have some anger, and the other guy is sorrow. So you have to mix all those things. It's kind of like a cake mix. If you get those mixed so that one doesn't overpower the other, it's a good thing. The Wheel of Fortune is a casino wheel. And it's here, I know. I can't find it. Their Death card in here is a jar of mayonnaise, salmonella. It's salmonella. And their Vice card is a very kitschy looking 1950s dancing legs on a chocolate cake, and then around it is liquor and cigarettes and all the other vices that make up being part of the devil. But it's a really funny deck. It's an interesting deck. They have the person who did it followed through with the descriptions in their little white book, the little interpretive book, but it's really fun and it reads really well. I used to have clients come in and say, get out that deck with the old 50s stuff in it. From those which are very detailed and have a lot of intricate images to trigger off what you want to read, you can get this deck, which is called Life is Like a Board Game, and it's based on things that look like Monopoly, and if you're my age, you played lots of Monopoly. And like 7 of Pentacles, which is in the Rider-Waite is the guy by the bush waiting for his plants to come in. It's the Waiting Patiently Avenue. And 3 of Cups, which is the women dancing with cups over their heads. It's a party place. And 5 of Wands, which is those guys fighting but not really hitting each other. It's the Conflict Garden. And this will give you an idea. This is the High Priestess. It's just a crystal ball. So the Hierophant, which is actually the Greek word for Pope, it's a cross. So it's really kind of a funny, interesting. This is their interpretation of temperance, which I said was balance and mixing things well. It's got 2 different ways you can go and 2 different inputs into what's happening around you. What I like about this deck is if you know the cards and you want to know the cards well, learning their keywords on this, because that's how I read and that's how I teach people to read. Their keywords are important. They do not have a little white book. So if you're not sure, get an app on how to read the cards and how to interpret them, or you need to get, or just get a Rider-Waite and have it right next to you so you can look at it. Now this is a deck I really like. I like it because I think it's beautiful and it's very pretty and its images are very stark. Now, this author, when she put out this deck, she put it out with reverses in her little white book. So that meant you're meant to read these reversed. And they're very stark, but I have some people who find they relate to the images on this better. That was the King of Pentacles. This is the Ten of Wands, and you know, in the Ten of Wands, you're feeling overburdened. Well, sometimes that guy doesn't look all that overburdened when they do him in the cards, but in this one he does. And Justice's Scales. They're real stark. I think they're real pretty. I really like the color on them. I think the color can draw you in. And they also, for me, they read very well. So, and they've got their little white book is a little black book. And it actually has a little colored version of the card on the page. And you see how much detail they give you and how they interpreted that card. And every time I read anybody's books about cards, I always learn a lot. I learn a lot about how to look at the cards. Sometimes I learn to look at a card very differently than I have in the past. And of course, my favorite deck, if you've been watching this channel at all, you know, the Inner Child Tarot cards. And it is like the New Age cards. They progressed. They took the suits and they changed them. And that's another thing you need to make sure when you're looking at one of these decks that does not use a typical form of the card. It helps if you really get to know what they're talking about in the first place. And this is Seven of Hearts. You know, I always read in this book because they spent, I think I read when I first got this deck that they'd spent 25 years developing this deck. And, you know, if somebody puts that much time and effort into it, I'm going to pay attention to what they thought they were seeing. This is Seven of Hearts, the mystical number for visions, dreams, and contemplations. It's associated with 7 chakras, 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 sisters in the Pleiades, the 7 stars in the Big Dipper. So it's a peaceful mermaid looking meditatively at a 7-winged heart. 7 winged hearts surround her. And I think it's a good card for us to close this reading with because it says, when you meditate on universal truths and secret, you expand your consciousness. And I'll hope you look at different decks and cards if that's what you want to do and learn all the symbols, that the numbers are important, that the symbols are important, and that the artist who put them together empowered them with a certain amount of energy. Reacquaint yourself with the power of hidden resources and balance your outer desires with your inner needs. Take time to be alone and nurture your own soul. Create your own little world and sanctuary by using the different tools. And I think that's what we can do. And this is not, I know if you've seen other readers, they'll have card reveals and they'll reveal 100 decks. I just want to let you understand why I pick the decks I pick. When I do my annual my 12-month reading, I use this deck because I think it's very powerful. And I use these as qualifiers because they're very pretty and delicate, but they can have a hard edge on them when they want to make sure you pay attention to that. Anyway, all the decks I spoke about here, I will put in the description below. And thank you for coming and visiting me in the garden. I am recovering, but I may not be taping this weekend because I really have to rest. I keep saying I'm going to rest and I don't rest. And so anyway, I'm going to have to go take care of myself and hermit for a while. And so I probably won't have another video up until Monday. So it's been a difficult week. It's been an empowering week for me in many ways. And I'm trying to balance out my own energy so that I can come back 100%. Thank you for visiting me in the garden today. And if you have any ideas of stuff you'd like to see, someone just insisted I had to tell her about I Ching. So I've studied a long time ago. I'm getting some new stuff so I can bring that to you. I'm going to talk some more about numbers as they extend from the tarot through sacred geometry into numerology. And, come along on that journey too. Enjoyed having you on the path. And do like the 7 of Hearts. Spend some time quietly meditating and healing yourself. Thank you.